You're good to go.
All right, I would like to call to order the meeting of the Personnel and Administration Committee. Madam Clerk, or is it Mrs. Clerk? Mr. Clerk, could you please call the roll?
Alderman Cone,
Sorry, I just muted myself. Present.
Alderwoman Tyus, Alderwoman Ingracia,
Present.
Alderman Oldenburg,
Here.
Alderwoman Middlebrook, Alderman Narayan,
Here.
Alderwoman Rice,
Here.
Alderwoman Schweitzer,
Here.
Alderman Page, Alderwoman Walker, President Green,
Present.
Alderwoman Tyus.
I'm sorry, I was muted. Present.
Alderwoman Middlebrook, Alderman Page, Alderwoman Walker. We have 8 present. We have a quorum.
Thank you. First order of business, I'd like to entertain a motion on the approval of the minutes from Wednesday, June 8th.
So moved.
Second.
I'm sorry, Madam Chair, could I, on discussion on the minutes?
Sure.
Thank you. I'm not sure who the right person would be to ask, since our chairperson, our previous chairperson of this committee is not on this committee at the moment. But there was a discussion in closed session, and then there wasn't any report out of the closed session if there were decisions made in there that that should be noted in the public. I'm not sure if it's correct in the minutes as to reporting for what was decided in that session, then that's fine. Normally I thought we came up with some sort of action or something, a vote had been taken, if a vote had been taken on something within closed session, but I'm not sure if anybody recalls what was there. So not to discuss, the discussion that was in closed session, but does anyone have any insight on that?
Alderwoman from the first. You're muted.
I'm trying to unmute. So I didn't look at the minutes. If it's in the minutes, then we can speak to it. Is there something particular you were asking about in the minutes?
Sure. There was a piece of closed session in the minutes that happened. So this was June 8th. There was an entry.
When?
June 8th.
Oh, I know what we talked about.
Okay. So my question was was there anything that was decided or voted upon within closed session that should have been reported out in the minutes as an action that was taken by the committee?
So I can say that this was after we had 3 aldermen get indicted, okay? And we had some personnel discussions about things that happened, and that's the most that I can say on camera, okay? I don't think there's probably anything that we can say. In fact, even the clerk was asked to leave. I'm trying to say, Alderman Narayan, you were there, right? And Alderman Cohen, I think.
Okay.
I can fill you in after.
I think I know what you're referring
to it.
Yeah. Okay. I think I know what you're referring to. Was there not a personnel meeting about hiring of staff that happened?
That was too.
That was in that discussion too? Okay.
I don't remember that being at that. I'll have to get my notes out because I just didn't really, because I was preparing for streets and public safety. So I didn't really get a chance to prepare for this, but I'll get my notes out. If you don't have to pass the minutes today, if you would prefer not to pass the minutes until we can make sure they're right, since most of you all were not here, that's perfectly acceptable.
I don't have a super strong objection. It was more the personnel conversation. If there was a decision made about a procedure to hire, I know we don't talk specifics about who comes out once personnel reviews the applications, then those normally go to the full board for consideration. So if something like that had changed, I feel like that should be reflected in the minutes. But if nothing changed there, then I'm okay going forward.
So any procedure would have been reflected in the minutes, okay? Because that's not something that would be under closed session.
Okay.
And even we didn't, and again, I need to just go back and look at my notes because I always usually take notes and I just didn't have time to prepare for this. So my suggestion, if you're uncomfortable that, and you all can make that decision, is that we not pass the minutes until we go, and I'll try to pull them, and maybe the alderman from the 25th has more to input, and I'll yield my time.
Right, Alderman from the 25th.
Thank you, Madam President. I believe the subject that the Alderwoman from the 8th Ward is referencing is we passed a resolution as a board right before going down for summer recess that directed the clerk to hire positions that were deemed critical by the board. I, like the Alderwoman from the 1st Ward, I can't recall if we actually discussed that in committee. I believe it was just passed by the full board. I don't think it came to the personnel committee. I think it was just introduced at the full board before we went down for recess. So it wouldn't be reflected in our committee meeting minutes because it was something that was introduced before the full board and not at the committee, which was another issue that I think I might have taken at the time. But I'm happy to withdraw my second so that we can, make sure that the minutes accurately reflect the conversation that took place and personnel. I don't recall that resolution being heard at the Personnel and Administration Committee. I remember it specifically being passed at the full board level.
Alderwoman from the 8th.
Yeah, I have no problem. If that didn't come to personnel, that was my misunderstanding on that resolution. I think that's what I was trying to remember where that conversation had happened. So if I think the minutes reflect the conversation on June 8th just fine. So I don't have any objection.
Well, I'm sorry.
We'll go Alderwoman from the 1st and then back to the Alderman from the 25th. Alderman from the.
I'd yield to the Alderman from the 25th since he wants to respond to a conversation he and the Alderwoman from the 8th were having.
Alderman from the 25th.
Thank you, Madam President. I think I just want to reiterate, I'm fine removing my second from the motion so that we can confirm that. My recollection of that is a little bit spotty. I just know that the resolution specifically was introduced at the full board of aldermen and voted on by the full board. I don't specifically recall as to whether or not it was in the personnel committee. I don't believe that it was, but I would prefer to actually go back and review to make sure that we're passing the correct meeting minutes. So I'll remove my second.
Okay. Alderwoman from the 6th.
I will also remove my motion to approve minutes.
Okay, so we will pause on the approval of the minutes for today. And when we have our next personnel committee meeting, we will bring back up the minutes from June 8th and today's minutes for approval once we ensure the accuracy of those minutes from June 8th. All right. Board bills for review. We have 2 board bills before us today. Board bill number 119, sponsored by Alderwoman Howard, and board bill number 126, sponsored by Alderman Vaccaro. We'll go ahead and start with the Alderwoman from the 14th Ward. You are recognized on board bill number 119. I think you're muted. Nope, still muted.
I emailed some documents to Ms. Higgs and I was hoping she could put them in the folder. Because I don't know how to share and I can't seem to get the things to share up on my iPad. So if she would be kind enough to maybe do that, I don't know if she has but anyway, okay. Give me a minute here.
Will do. I will send those to Kennedy and have the clerk to, put those in, upload those to the drive for you.
Okay, thank you.
You're
That'd be
welcome.
great. Okay, Board Bill 119 proposes a new salary schedule for all aldermen that will be elected come April. I'm sorry. And what we're doing is looking at the possibility of raising the salary to approximately $72,000. I've heard, quite a bit of conversation about this. And the reason for that number is because it was told to me that that money had already been appropriated. It's in the budget. And I felt as though that since we're doubling the size of the wards, doubling the size of the population that the alderman would be serving, that it would be a good starting point for this conversation. Some people seem to think it's too much. Other people think maybe it's not enough. But we have, Heather Navarro, who was the alderwoman of the 28th Ward, shared quite a bit of the research she had done previously. And when you look at what is paid in other cities that are comparable to ours, I don't think that we're too far out of line. As a matter of fact, when you look at Kansas City, their salary schedule currently is approximately about the same as what we would be paying. So at this time, I will put the Board Bill 119 in front of you. And Madam Chair, if I would entertain any questions. I don't know if the information's been uploaded yet, though.
Is the information that you're trying to upload the presentation that we had previously that
There's a presentation that cites all like comparable populated cities and what their I guess structure is as far as personnel and what the aldermen or council people make. And I don't know if you've already viewed that. And then there's, excuse me, I'm sorry, hold on.
Chairwoman Green, if it's helpful, I have that drive pulled up if you want me to share any of that so that not only committee people can see it, but members of the public.
Alderwoman for the 14th, you're muted again.
Alderwoman Ingrassi, if you would be so kind as to put that on the screen. Are you looking at the a PowerPoint that was put together?
Yes, I can pull that up right now if the chair and you are interested in me doing that. I've got it pulled up on my computer anyway.
I'm not sure the composition of the committee, if it's the same or if there's more people. And I think that this probably, I don't know if that was shared publicly before back in November or whenever it was. It wouldn't be a bad idea to go over it again. I think it would be in the interest of transparency. I think, go ahead and show it if you would, please.
Okay. Are you able to see that okay, everybody?
I am, yeah. It was put together by Heather Navarro, and she did extensive research. So it actually takes in all of the thinking on how the new structure of the 14 wards would be and the assistants and the personnel that would be available to help the elected officials. The peer cities are enumerated by population, the number of representatives per person per population. A strong mayor with no city manager and other considerations, the city's growth rate, median income, geographic size, and the city county government. The size of the city has a positive but weak correlation to salary of elected representatives, and the ratio of elected representatives to the number of citizens also positively but weakly correlated to the salary. So if we look at New Orleans, and I think the one that's more striking is Kansas City. They have 84,000 per person, and they pay $75,000. We only have 21,000. Well, at the time this was put together, so we will probably go up to about 40,000, and so it would be approximately 72,000 is how we're looking at it now. So if you look at what other cities of comparable size are being paid, I guess the only one that's less is Nashville, and they only represent they have 41 reps representing about 16,000 people. So it looks at the current staffing. Whoops.
I wasn't sure if you wanted to keep going. That was the gist of the salary.
Yeah, that's and then this talks about how the staffing and coming to some conclusions about that. But I think that, and then there was the other piece that I sent that really had a rundown of many more cities that may be in your folder. I don't know if that's been placed in your folder or not. And it's basically a spreadsheet. But that's how I came to the conclusion. But, you know, at this point, I think part of the idea of this committee would be to examine this and see if it is a reasonable salary. Is this too much? Is it right sized? You know, where do we stand? And then, you know, when we look at the rules say that, you know, aldermen should get raises as they move through, not while they're in office, but if they get reelected. And I was thinking maybe I was the only alderman that didn't get a raise, but I called personnel and they said, well, nobody from the city, you know, has gotten a raise in 13 years. And that's exactly how long I've been in office. So everyone has the same salary and no one has gotten a raise. So I don't know. And, you know, I didn't go in this for the money. This was my job. And I don't hold another job. Other people, you know, this is their only job. I don't know with the serving, you know, the doubling the size of the ward and serving more people in more territory. I don't know how much that will increase their workload. But I think at this time, I would be willing to take questions and input on this, because I think it's a conversation that needs to be had. And I think as we move forward, I'm not running for office again, so I have nothing to gain by this. And I think some people are a little, that are running for office are a little put off by this because it does seem as though it's a money grab, or it could seem as though it's a money grab. I don't think it is, but I think we need to move carefully. And the thing we need to remember is once these people are installed in office, whoever's elected on the next term, they can't raise their salary once they're in office until they're out of office. So I think that we need to be prepared and we need to have a fair salary for people. And it needs to complement the increased workload, whatever that is. So at this time, I'll yield for questions if people have them. Madam Chair.
Alderman Cone. Any questions? He's still here. Maybe not. Alderwoman Tyus.
Alderwoman from the 14th, I want to weigh in to say when I was a very new alderperson, we tried to, there was a bill submitted by then 25th Ward Alderman Paul Michael Beckerly that was about our pension. I was trying to do, I'm doing good government. So I was the vote that voted it down. Okay. And now 30 years later, I know how really naive I was about not looking after my own pension, and not just myself, but the entire board. So I am open to this. In fact, I picked up board bill number 6, which was Alderman John Collins Muhammad's bill, and put my name on it because I did not want to lose this issue. I haven't really had time to go over your bill. As I said, I wasn't prepared for this meeting. So I don't have any specific questions except for to let you know, right now I'm going to just be voting present. It doesn't mean I'm not going to support it or any derivative thereof, because I came here and I took a $10,000 pay cut from the public defender's office in 1991, and I made $23,000. And here it is in 2000 and about to be 23. And what do we make? I don't even know what we make, 30 something thousand or something, you know, and so that's ridiculous. That is ridiculous. So I want to just go over your bill and compare it to what was in his bill. But we do need to have a pay increase, and we have to put on our big girl pants and big boy pants and tell the people the truth. You know, they really think we make a lot more money. When I tell my constituents what I make, they're like, Alderwoman, why can you do that? I say, I'm a kept woman. And I am. I have a, you know, the thing that I'm opposed to, I am a kept woman because I have a husband that makes good money. But if I could not afford to do that if I didn't. Okay. So if you are going to put in all these hours, and I put in a lot of hours, then you ought to be able to nobody's talking about make a major sum, but there needs to be a move. I don't know if it's 75. I don't know if it's 85. I don't know if it's 65, but we cannot continue to languish here and not acknowledge that we put in a lot of hours. People think we're out in the alleys and we should be getting dumpsters. They don't understand the amount of legislative work that goes into it and reading and things like that. So when I vote present, it's not against your bill. I just haven't prepared for this whole thing. And I want to read it and I want to compare it to what was in Alderman Collins Muhammad's bill, which I put my name on, and just see, because I wasn't there when you guys were working on what we needed to do to transition. But I'm supportive of the whole thing, and I am going to be running for something, and I'm still supportive of it because you need to tell people up front the truth to me. So I appreciate you bringing this bill. I have no further statements at this point.
Thank you, Alderwoman.
Alderwoman from the Alderman from the 25th is back. If let's go to him first.
It's okay. I missed my initial chance. You can go through the rest of the committee and come back to me.
Okay.
Thank you.
Alderwoman from the 6th.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the committee. Alderwoman Howard, I appreciate you bringing this board bill forward. I think it's an important conversation to have. $37,000 is just not enough money to encourage the number of people who we could be, potentially having consider running for office to want to take on such a challenging job, especially with double the number of constituents and double the amount of work. I think many of us who have taken this on as a more full-time job than not have struggled financially in order to make the decision to run for office. And I don't know if 72 is the exact number, but I think it's probably falls somewhere around there. It's my understanding that, a livable wage in the city of St. Louis for a single person with one child is around $68,000 a year. So I think that, we're close to the correct number of where it needs to be. I would be interested in hearing from the public, any thoughts or questions that they have. But again, appreciate you moving this important conversation forward today. I don't have anything further.
Right. Alderman from the 16th.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. I agree with a good portion of what the Alderwoman from the 6th has said, as well as others that have spoke prior. Alderwoman, I do think this is important work of this committee, and I had a question. specifically around timing and logistics, were you envisioning a vote today on this? Because I think I would have to concur and agree with the older one from the first. I'm not necessarily prepared to vote today.
I'm amenable to having a public hearing if the committee deems that necessary. I am not in a big hurry, but we do need to keep in mind
I agree.
that we're running out of time here, and this probably should have been done a while back, but coulda, woulda, shoulda is the byword here. So, yeah, I'm amenable to whatever the committee decides. I'm carrying this because one of the reasons is I'm not running. And I think that, if we're going to get quality representation in the city, we need to have quality salaries and we need to have a quality people running. So, yes, if we need an open hearing, I know there's been a lot of chatter in the news media about it, pro and, against it. And I'm not doing it only for the welfare of the city I love. So if we need to have open conversations, I'm amenable to that.
Yeah. Okay, I appreciate that, Alderwoman. And
Okay.
for the record, I do want to recognize your selflessness on this. This is not always the most popular thing, right? Paid elected officials getting a raise, but it is important work in
Yeah.
the discussion for sure.
Well,
and
thank you.
I do applaud you for that. Thank you. Nothing further for me, Chairwoman.
Thank you.
Right. Alderman from the 24th.
Thank you, Madam President. I echo a lot of what I've heard from the alderman from the 1st, the 6th, and the alderman from the 16th. I know in between all the neighborhood association meetings, the ward meetings, constituent services, committee meetings, the full board meetings, and that's not even touching on the actual legislating, the reading and writing. When I have hesitated to crunch my my hourly wage on this, but I would imagine that it's well below minimum wage. Especially as we move to a city of 14 legislators, I think if we're going to attract quality candidates from the private sector to run and get into local government, we're going to have to increase the wage to some extent. I don't know where that number should be. I would like to hear from the public on where they believe it should be. Ultimately, it's their city. We work for the people. I agree that this process should have started quite some time ago. And I appreciate the alderwoman from the 14th bringing this. I would be curious if the alderwoman from the 14th would yield for a question.
Alderwoman.
Yes, I will.
Thank you. In your research and former Alderwoman Navarro's research, do we have any concept of what percent raise this is compared to other city workers over the same time frame?
You mean compared to St. Louis city workers?
Yes.
The number we're looking at is 100% raise. And as I stated, begin with, nobody in the city has received a raise probably since 2010 that I know of. Now it may go back further than that. We had, when I came into office, we were asked to give up part of our salary to make sure that we could retain some of our workers. It was a severe budget crunch, I guess, from the 2008 downturn in the economy. And the city was very, very financially strapped at that time. So there were no raises issued to anyone, nor have there been any since, which kind of explains where we are with our workforce. So yes, it's almost embarrassing because, our police start far less. And And I guess my thinking was you can always go down. It's hard to raise it higher. So, and that was the number, you know, I was informed that that money was already appropriated in the budget for the Board of Aldermen. So that was the number I chose. Is that the number that has to come out of this committee? No, I'm not sold on any of it. Is I have no interest in it personally. But I think the public does, and I think those people that plan to be incumbents need to be aware of what's going on. And I think that, you know, as I said, we need to have some public input on this.
I agree with you very much. And thank you for your answers there. And if President Green would yield for a question, please.
Yes, I will.
Would you be willing to hold a meeting with public comment, a little bit more advertised meeting, I guess, with public comment? Because I really would be curious on what the general public thought an appropriate number was, because I agree with the Alderwoman from the first, when we tell people what we make, they say, why the heck are you putting in all these hours for that? You know, especially for the folks on the board who left other more lucrative jobs to come and do this, because it's something, even if you think you're going to do it part-time, it really becomes a full-time thing. And so I would pause to vote today. I'd feel much more comfortable if we had more robust public hearing on it.
I am happy to call another hearing next week. Probably a week from today. We are going down on Tuesday. And just, you know, keeping that in mind, we have a limited number of meetings left in this session, but I'm happy to call another meeting next week, and we can figure out that timing and make sure that we thoroughly disseminate information to get public comment for it.
That'd be great. I appreciate that very much. And again, thank you, Alderwoman from the 14th, for your work on this. It's not a popular subject always. I know that. So thank you. And with that, I'll yield.
Alderwoman from the first, I see you have a question.
I've already spoken, so if there's someone else that wants to speak first, I'll just yield and wait until they've spoken.
Okay, let me finish going through the order on the committee and then we'll loop back around. Alderwoman from the 13th.
Is Alderwoman Rice on the committee? Is she before me?
Oh, she is. My apologies. Alderwoman from the 8th.
Thanks so much. New committee assignments here. So I thank you, Alderwoman from the 14th, for bringing this. Just, I think echoing what everyone else has mentioned here, that, you know, I was one of those who took this on as more of a part-time job, turned into a full-time job. I left my other position, and it's definitely a challenge, even as a single person, a challenge on this salary. If I were trying to raise a family, if this was, you know, a sole income with children, it's incredibly challenging to do. And so I think just echoing that the, you know, political jobs, public service jobs should not just be for people who have someone else who has income in the household, or for people with no children, or, you know, people this is their second career type of situation. We should make this accessible for anyone who wishes to participate. And so I do agree with raising this salary. I would be grateful to hear from other folks. And also we know that we need to pay our city workers more. All of us know that. And so if we can find some way to move these things together, I think that would be really helpful as well. But I very much appreciate you bringing this and happy to continue to dig in on this with you. So thank you.
Now Alderwoman from the 13th.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair, members of the committee. This is something I'm very interested in looking at. I think that I agree with the Alderman from the 24th's comments about looking at this number in line with city workers across the departments that especially that we're having the hardest time hiring in. My understanding is that the salary for an alderperson hasn't changed since the 90s. I don't know if anyone has an exact date, but what was a refuse worker paid at that time? What was a assistant prosecuting attorney paid at that time? What was a 911 operator paid at that time? And having the conversation in that context, no city worker besides alderpersons get to sit in this room and make a decision about their own salary, even if it's in the next election cycle. So I'm very cognizant of that and agree that, we absolutely need to be paying, more attention to our city worker benefits and pay than our own benefits and pay. And I do hope we can get a hearing on Resolution 128 about that soon. I'm waiting for a response from the personnel director. That's something that I'm really curious about. I think our constituents, at least my constituents, are not going to be happy with any conversation about raising the salary of the alders without it being in context of other city worker services. At the end of the day, this is a service job. This is public service. I'm, glad to hear that people aren't, not trying to get rich off of being an older person. That would be impossible. Just making sure that's the forefront. My question is, we have this new committee that's dealing with ward reduction. Will this bill be heard as well in that committee? Okay, so this is the hearing place for it.
So
And then, of course, because of our rule change at the beginning of the 2021, beginning of that session, we had a rule change that all the bills that we hear before they get a vote have to have a public comment period. So I know that will happen with this bill.
just so we're aware, this was noticed to take public comment today.
Okay.
We did not have anybody sign up.
Okay.
And I think that if all of us are getting this out via our networks over the next week, it's possible that we have folks turn out next week.
Okay. Well, and then I guess my question would be, is there any idea of that percentage change that's happened? I mean, I know that city workers did in fact get a raise in the last year, that 3% plus the 1% for performance. So it's not, necessarily true to say that they haven't gotten a raise since 2010. But what I would really like to see some data from personnel. President Green, what do you suggest there? Just sending an email asking for, that, change in salary what do you think we should do?
Yes, and if you would like to CC me or somebody from my office on that email, I'm happy to work with the personnel director.
Okay.
To put together that information.
Okay, I appreciate that. And I again appreciate the Alderman from the 14th putting a bill forward for discussion. From the things that you've said, I can tell that you're kind of putting a number out there, and it's not necessarily the number that you think it should be necessarily, but just to have the bill forward and to have the discussion. It's really important. I agree these conversations are overdue. I think we'll have to hit the ground running on a lot of things after a lot of turmoil. So I appreciate everybody's time on this. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
From the 5th.
Yes. Thank you, Madam President / Madam Chair. I'm looking, I think this is a very, very timely issue. And I thank the Alderwoman from 14 for championing this idea. It could not possibly be more timely. I also like the idea of at least researching the scale of increase of other city employees, which we know they have gone up, and the aldermanic salaries have pretty much remained stagnant. So I think that would be a very valid input into the process. even though we're probably not ready to vote today, I think we should be so in the very near future because of the way the calendar is winding down on this legislative session. With that, would the Alderwoman from the 14th yield for a question?
Alderwoman from the 14th, would you yield?
Yes, ma'am.
In reviewing the bill, there's something I'm trying to figure out here, and that has to do with that's going to be about starting at about line 7 on page 2 of 3. And it is the general municipal revenue appropriation and usage of those funds. You see what I'm talking about?
Repeat where you said that was again.
Okay, on page 2 of 3,
Okay, line.
starting at line 7 through 22.
Okay.
Okay, my question is this, and I hope this isn't too far down in the weeds. Under the current setup,
Mhm.
there's an option to accept expense money and report it in detail, or
Mhm.
accept expense money and not report the detail and have it taxable.
Right.
I'll say for myself, that was a no-brainer because except I'll take the tax hit so that I don't have to report, so that I can use that time to get to more neighborhood association meetings, to answer more calls from my constituents. You see what I'm saying?
Uh-huh.
And
I understand.
I don't see that provision baked in here. It appears to be reportable only. Has any consideration been for a non-reportable, just purely for the reason of not having the time-consuming part of doing accurate reporting?
Yes, and this is exactly, this is from the current legislation. So I think it's at his or her discretion. So I will look into that and
But I just wanted to
and
bring
make
that
sure
forward,
that is
because I think it would be an advantage to have a choice, to have a taxable amount that's not reportable, or a non-taxable amount that is fully reportable line by line. I just
as we do now.
As we do now. I just
And
wanted to get that idea there.
This wording is exactly from, except for where it's struck out and the numbers are changed, is exactly from the legislation we currently have. Unless there's, I'll have to look and see that there's not a mistake here. Okay.
Okay, all right. But I just wanted to get that question out in the universe. And with that,
I
I
appreciate
yield back,
that.
Madam
I will look.
President.
Okay. Because I agree with you. I think it's smart to have it either way.
Alderwoman from the 22nd. Right. Alderman from the 25th.
Thank you, Madam President. Yeah, I just want to, make note that I think that this has been, certainly a long time coming. Even when we first introduced the board bill to put this out on the ballot, I was hoping at that time that we would establish a citizen commission to review these types of details with respect to the transition to a smaller board of alderpersons. So, without the benefit of those discussions having taken place over the last, 10 years now, it's certainly incumbent upon us to at least initiate those conversations. So I certainly appreciate the Alderwoman from the 14th taking the initiative and introducing this board bill. Understanding that it's not necessarily where it may land, could be higher, could be lower, could be right on the nose in terms of, what the recommendation is here. Certainly as I've had conversations about running for re-election, this has come up in those conversations in terms of questions from constituents. And they think that we should be, making more given the additional responsibilities that we'll be assuming, for those that, decide to run and, ultimately, when there bid an election next spring. So I've not heard of anyone, at least in the last several months since this was introduced, that has been opposed. And in fact, even before it was introduced, it had been a question that had come up many times with respect to what our plans were. So it's nice to at least be able to have some sort of a response for those questions that come up at this point in terms of actions that are being taken. I know that the former alderwomen from the 28th, the 11th, and others, including myself, were part of some discussions that had taken place last session. I'm glad to see that those are being discussed this morning. Also happy to know that we're not planning to take a vote on this today, and that we're just simply opening up the discussion, for further consideration and input from our citizens. Certainly the residents and taxpayers of the city should have a voice in this. Sorry. Okay, it must have been an accident. So, I just, look forward to the discussion that takes place here in the coming days. And hopefully, I believe as the alderwoman from the first had mentioned, that we do this also in concert with staffing for the Board of Aldermen, because that's also a question that kind of goes hand in hand with, the pay rate that future alder people will be making. I certainly don't think that being a one-person shop in terms of communications, legislation, analysis, constituent services, et cetera, will make anyone successful in the future if we don't have the staff to support it. And I know all of us, or most of us at least, understand that, and just really look forward to the conversation. Thank you.
I'll now move to members not on the committee. Looks like Alderwoman Davis has a question.
Yes, thank you very much, Madam Chair. What I'd like to do is to add some of the information that was very public in the legislative committee when this research was done, that has been presented and talked about with this board bill. We had a lot of research that was done, and most especially when looking at those areas that are around us. There was one thing that took place in many of those cities. It was a regular process of reviewing salaries of the elected officials. Whereas if we look at the history of the Board of Aldermen, it averages about every 25 to 27 years before there is an increase for the alderpersons. So it's pretty stagnant and definitely not in line with current cities. The other thing is, I'm hoping that if you're going to do a public, rather ask for another public engagement, because this was advertised for public review, that we also print good information for people to have discern on. There's a lot of misinformation that has been published even by the Post-Dispatch, comparing the Board of Aldermen and its duties to St. Louis County executives. And that is not
oranges. I'm sorry. I'm sorry, I didn't know my mic was open.
Okay. So that is not a comparison that should be made because they represent a county government at an executive level, whereas maybe there are 140,000 people in their territory, but all of those territories have their own legislative bodies. They have their own mayors, alderpersons, budgets, staffing for the city services, all of that. So they don't have the same jobs that we have, and there's no comparison. And so it's important that we do give the public all the correct information so that they can judge it fairly. Also, in the process of looking at all of this, the additional staffing that is required probably will even itself out, because reducing the number of alderpersons, you already have enough secretaries where you would only have 2 alderpersons per secretary that is currently staffing. You also need that other, I call it a legislative assistant. Some people call it a research assistant, because one of the things we do know, all of us spend a lot of time trying to prepare, trying to read everything. And it would be good if you have an area this large with twice as many complaints and concerns and requests coming in, that you do have that assistant, full-time assistant. We also had an opportunity to look at the state level and the federal level, and the structure that is presented to follow through on is in line with what happens everywhere else. And the interesting note about this time period is the federal government is looking at their salaries right now. Congress is. And that's another body that doesn't raise their salaries, but about once every 20 years. And they're having the same problems. They've got Congress people sleeping in their offices because the small expense they get is not enough to have dual residency and take care of their bills and things for their families at home. It's a tough job, and we have to figure it out. And finally, for me, having full pension is really important for anybody for the future, because it's not fair to have someone work 25, 30, 35 years and they walk out with a partial pension, because we are identified as part-time employees. And you've worked 30 years and you may have a pension for $600 a month. That is obscene. That is ridiculous. And I'm sure the constituents of the city of St. Louis don't realize those things. So let's make sure we print out all the correct information and how it correlates. Thank you.
Thank you, Alderwoman. I see the Alderwoman from the 1st has her hand raised.
Thank you, Madam President / Chair. Want to bring up a few things. If we're going to have an extra meeting, I would maybe question if we could have it in the evening, because a lot of times people can't come during the day to make comments or whatever. So just a suggestion, maybe we can't, but maybe we can, especially since we're doing Zoom, and you might get more participation. And I also want to suggest that if we have to, we call an extra meeting right away so that we make sure we get this addressed. I just sat and figured what the amount of money I had as an increase. It was a cost of living increase. I got an average since 1991 to current of $450.60 a year. That's been the average that I've been able to get before taxes. Okay, so that's not very much. The alderman from the 5th was talking about expense report versus salary, I think. The expense report is what you get that's on the side that's extra, that I don't think we addressed that maybe, because that also is going to need to double. Okay, and that's the one that you can either take as a salary, which I never have. I've always reported, but that's what that is. Okay, so it's different than your salary. Now, the current mayor and previous mayors before her have taken their expense report and put it as their salary, but I never have. I always thought that was for expenses, and so you keep that over there. So while we're addressing salary, we also need to at least take those expense reports and double those. I'm sorry, the expense account, the amount, and double that, because I think it's, I don't know, at 4,000 and something now. So we go to maybe
it's been raised.
Oh, it did?
Double, yeah.
Okay. Like I said, I hadn't read all of this.
Okay.
And I had, let's see here, one other little comment. I did the extra meetings. If we're gonna do one, I just want us to call it early. Public comment, we talked about having an evening meeting, okay? And I want people to really, I'm not going to run from this issue. If I'm going to support it, I'm going to put my name on it, because that's something, if people want to make something out of it, then they will. I agree with the Alderman from the 19th. I have always been very irritated when people talk about the Board of Aldermen being part-time, because when I came here and I took a pay cut from the Public Defender's Office, being a lawyer at the Public Defender's Office, which makes the least money almost that you can make and be a lawyer. And I still took a $10,000 pay cut. I had to sit down with my husband and we decided that I was going to be in public service and that was going to hurt. But that doesn't mean you work for free. So when I look at $400, $450 over a year for over 30 years, that is just nothing. And so we have to, again, claim it and say, we need to make more money. And I think that all aldermen, whether they're running or not, should be, if you really believe that we need to make more money, ought to put your name on this bill, whatever we come up with, and be forthright with the people. And I want to be as, and this also goes to the next bill coming up. There is nothing in the charter that says we are part-time. That is something that the Post-Dispatch and other people have said that is false over and over and over. I've been interviewed more than any of you all on this board probably put together. And every time they've said that, I said, well, show me where it says it in the charter. Show me where it says it in the rule. It does not say that. That is a way to diminish and demean us, the work that we do. My first 10 years, I probably worked 14 hours, 16 hours a day. It was never part-time. I don't work quite as much because some things I got done, but I still work a lot of hours. So for people to say that as though that is true is just misleading, it's insulting, and it's an agenda that they have to say that they don't want checks and balance. The Board of Aldermen is a legislative body that's supposed to be a check and balance. We are equal to, there are 3 branches of government on state, federal, and local level. And for some reason, there is a group of people, and I know what it is, because if you only have to deal with a mayor, then you don't have to deal with all them people that may say, oh, I don't agree with that. And I will use the example of trying to, what I call, have a long-term lease on the airport. I call it co-oping. If we had not had a diversity of people, that may have gone the wayside of, you probably don't know this, but when our dumps have been sold back in the 80s. And I want to say that while we're talking about salaries, Mayor Conway it used to be you could only make $25,000 a year. When Mayor Conway was the mayor, he took that out and got the charter changed. Up until that, when I came here 10 years later, people had just started to make a little bit more. And I'm talking about the mayor, everybody. You could only make $25,000 a year. So the difference in what they make now and what we make is astounding, because they were allowed to get more money and we were always afraid. And like I said, as far as the retirement, that's my fault, because I was the 15th vote. And I was just like, oh, I'm doing good government. That is not good government when you starve yourself. Okay. So that was not good government. And I know better now. So I will speak up and I'll take the hit. If anybody wants to be mad, be mad. That was not a good vote that I made. And I see former Alderman Beckley, and we joke about that. He says, you get it now, Sharon. I do, but I didn't then. So I'm glad that other people do. But to think that the mayors went from making $25,000, and I still don't think our mayor makes enough at $130, but we are still right at what we made back then. And that's ridiculous. Thank you, Madam President/Chair.
Any further discussion from members of the committee? Right. Couple of questions for the committee from my point of view. Sort of looking at the calendar, if we were able to schedule an evening meeting for a week from today, say 5:30, would that work for members of the committee?
Repeat that. When was that, Chairwoman?
1 week from today, so the 14th at 5:30 or later. I mean, if we wanted to do later than that, we could as well.
Madam Chair, there was an event from the mayor's office that was scheduled at 5:30 on Wednesday, the 14th.
Yeah. I also have a conflict, but
Right.
Could we do it later?
you could do it, potentially on my end, sure.
Or
What about Monday or Tuesday?
Yeah, Monday or Tuesday is better for me. But I'm not the
I
only
have
one.
conflicts Monday and Tuesday next week. I think the challenge, we're kind of in the year end and holiday season as well. And there's a lot of activities that are taking place after hours, especially even, I think I have like 5 or 6 neighborhood events that are taking place in the next few weeks. So just for one neighborhood that I represent.
What about like a mid-afternoon though? Is that potentially next week early?
Well, my whole point why I asked for an evening meeting, because people are at work a lot of
I see.
times and they can't get here. And so if you could do 6:30, if we're not gonna be in person, we're on Zoom, and we could get that out. So that would get people so that they can have some, since they want to have say, and they should have say about this raise. And we ought to be prepared by that time to answer it truthfully. So if we can't, that's okay. But if we always have day meetings, that omits
I
a lot.
can't make Wednesday though.
Okay.
I can't make Wednesday. And I feel as though as the sponsor, I need to be there.
Madam Chair, looking at the calendar, in order, we do have meetings in January. I know that, there is enough time on our meeting schedule in January to fully pass this out of the board before our February 10th cutoff at this point. Is it out of the realm of possibility to move this to that week of the 9th, and we could do an evening hearing? And there's, I apologize, I've got a buzzer going off in the back. On Wednesday, the 11th or something like that, when it's sort of holiday parties are over, that's the first week we're back in session. Is that too late?
So my question, I think, for the committee, and maybe we can't answer this until after we hear the next board bill. I think these two bills are very related in a lot of ways. And we are, should the second bill that we're about to hear need to go to the ballot, we need to get it there by January 24th.
Yeah.
So I want to be cognizant of that time frame. We may end up having to call some additional board meetings in order to make the deadlines, because we have 3 things potentially heading to the ballot that will need to make that 24th deadline. So I am okay pushing that off, as long as there is then an expectation that that a decision is made at that meeting and it is voted out, so that we can move this forward. I'll go Alderwoman from the 19th and then the Alderman from the 25th.
I wanted to just suggest that this is a very serious issue that must be done timely. And we did advertise this as a public meeting. We can send out another press release today and have a Saturday morning meeting at 10 a.m. I think that we need to be very cognizant of all of the timeframes, because you're in the city of St. Louis. Even though you're doing Zoom, all the people who need to operate things on our behalf for the public, we may have a bad snowstorm. Anything can happen. So we need to move this and move it fast. And I'm just going to recommend Saturday morning. Thank you.
So
I like
As the sponsor, I like that idea.
Saturday morning would work for me as well. Alderman from the 25th, did you have a comment on that or something else?
I was actually going to suggest maybe we look at weekend, so the Alderwoman from the 19th beat me to the punch, but I did have other comments as well.
Okay, let's handle the meeting first and then we'll go on to other comments. So does Saturday at 10 a.m., so that would be the 10th, work?
Would that be Zoom?
That
It would be Zoom.
Yes.
Okay, yeah, that works perfectly. That's much, yeah.
Okay. I'm not, Alderwoman from the 8th.
Yeah, I just wanted to verify, we need to clear with STLTV and our clerk's office that they can staff us that day.
So contingent upon their ability to staff this, we will tentatively say, we will bring this back up on Saturday at 10 a.m. And between now and then, let's be getting this out to our networks to ensure that we have the public show up to that meeting. Are there other? So I'm making a list here of things that the committee has requested. So a comparable to other city workers and raises over time is what I have written down. And the I think we have set it up so we will have the public testimony on Saturday, and we already have the comparison to other cities. Is there other information that we need in advance of that meeting on Saturday?
President Green, would you anticipate the vote would also be on Saturday, or would we still have a meeting next week to discuss the public testimony?
I will leave that open to the committee if we want to take public testimony and then call another meeting next week.
Think about it a little bit. Yeah, I would have to be in and out on Saturday, but I would be able to listen to all the public comment, as it comes in.
Okay. Sounds good. All right, any further discussion? I think I see Alderman from the 23rd. Is that your physical hand raised?
It is, because I don't know how to do this on the phone. If this is going to go to Saturday, then I would say let's move my bill to Saturday since they're so closely put together.
Yes, I would like to have some discussion on that today as sort of a pre-meeting to that, in anticipation of that meeting on Saturday, if that's all right with you, Alderman.
Yeah, but I mean, I'm fine moving it to Saturday. I'm actually sitting outside of another commitment, but this was important. I know I had to stay, so. But
I would like us to have initial discussion on that bill today.
That's fine.
We have discussed both going into Saturday.
That's fine. That's fine. And then, but yeah, and then we'll hear and vote on it Saturday, which, okay.
All right, Alderwoman from the 14th.
I'm just gonna step off here, if no one has any further questions.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
We'll see you Saturday. All right, so with that, let's move on to Board Bill number 126. Alderman from the 23rd, you are recognized on Board Bill 126.
Yeah, Board Bill 126 simply makes it a full-time job. It goes to the voters. It actually puts it on a ballot to say it's a full-time job. In my opinion, you would have no other job. I understand, Madam President, Chair, you feel that they should just somehow record that they're working 40 hours. I don't know how you do that.
Oh, no, I don't know.
I thought that's what I understood. But my thinking would be it's a full-time job. And as such, you wouldn't have any other job. This would be what you do. That's just my feelings. And certainly the committee can discuss it. I do it full time. I know other people do it full time. I think that if we're saying, gee, we want this kind of money, which is way more than a firefighter, policeman, an ambulance worker, then it should be a full-time job. But, go ahead and we can discuss it. But I really think Saturday is more appropriate, especially given the time that I need to be in somewhere instead of outside. And the chairwoman of the streets is wanting to restart her meeting back at 1, and I canceled my meeting to accommodate everybody else's meetings.
Okay. Well, we'll make this quick, Alderman. Alderman from the 25th, any initial comments?
Yeah, I really struggle with this for a variety of reasons. One, limiting folks and their ability to participate. As a legislator, I do not see this as tied to the other board bill. This is an entirely separate issue. That's why it's in a separate board bill. It's why it would have to go out to a vote of the people, because it's an amendment to our charter. So it's a completely separate and distinct issue from pay. It is a requirement and a disqualifier in some cases for residents and their desire to run to represent a ward and particularly a community. And without even getting into the correlation to pay, there's the ability to be able to track this without basically levying an across the board disqualifier. I can't even begin to get into the different elements here. There's just some examples. Doctors, lawyers, and other licensed professionals have to have certain number of hours of either training or or practice in order to maintain their licenses. You have small business owners. Would they qualify underneath this? Because that could be considered other employment. And so is this just folks that are earning a wage through a W-2, or is this also inclusive of people who are, taking withdrawals from LLCs or 1099s or doing other, types of things that might not show up? Are we going to be requiring people to send in their W-2s to ensure that they're only receiving a paycheck from the city? I mean, this is just so not even well thought out. And it's being kind of positioned as though it's just, we're getting a pay raise, so we need to send this out to a vote of the people. There's been absolutely no consideration or thought for other things that might be either a hindrance to the public to serve the city as a whole, or just the mechanics of how to administer this on the back end. So, I look forward to the discussion around this, but, I'm kind of, I'm apprehensive at this point, but look forward to the discussion.
Right, Alderwoman from the 1st.
What the alderman from the 25th said, and then, as I said before, it to me reflects back on somehow that this was a part-time job in the first place. It was never, there's no place in the charter and the rules to say this is a part-time job. That has been a publicity stunt by the Post-Dispatch and others to say that and to demean us. I have always worked full-time. That's why I got sick, because I was putting off taking care of my health, working full-time for this board. There is no definition of what is full-time in this board bill. What is full-time? And you can also work a job and you don't get paid. You can do deferred comp and you could still be working another job. So even if you asked for a W-2, you may not get that. I think that is, I'm not going to support it. I just think that it's not well thought out. And I don't think that doubling the salary is getting a pay raise. I've been saying it's bringing us on board to what we should have been. And especially if you're going to double the amount of duty that you have, that's not a raise. If I was making $20 an hour to look after 5 children, and now I got 10 or 15 children, and I got all these things that I have to do, that is not a pay raise. So I think that in this case, I just don't understand why the need to say it's full-time. If I can get something done in 5 minutes and you may take 10 minutes and somebody else takes, people have different times of how things are done. So I don't know how you report this. And I do not want to get into running after somebody saying, did you do some legal work and how much did you get paid? Every 4 years, you get a group of citizens that get to vote for you. We've had it even more often because we changed things. So we had every 2 years ago. So people get to vote for you then. And that's when you get, everybody always acts like, well, if there's no way for you to check up on it, what do you think votes are for? So I don't support it. I don't think that we're part-time. If you could show me where it says we're part-time, maybe I would, but we're not. And I have never worked part-time. And I don't want to presuppose that I would tell anybody else that you got to work full-time, because I don't know what that is. What is full-time? Different wards also have different needs. If you got a nice, beautiful ward that doesn't have LRA property as much of Southwest St. Louis does, it may be a very different thing than what is now called the 4th Ward, which when I got the LRA report, it was just dotted with green dots to indicate LRA property. So there is no definition of what full-time it is from ward to ward. And so, and I don't see this as a companion to the other thing. I think this is just an answer to a question or a statement that was false. And we should shout back, that is false. We do not work part-time. We work full-time. And we should not let the Post-Dispatch continue to put misinformation out about what we do. Thank you.
Right. Alderwoman from the 6th.
I don't think I had my hand up. If I did, I apologize.
I'm just going through the committee members.
Oh, did we take up Alderman Vaccaro's bill? I apologize. Is that what we're talking about now?
Yes, that is what we're
Okay,
talking about.
sorry. I don't have any comment. I'm interested in hearing what the public has to say. I do agree that, you know, having it not, the words part-time not be in the charter is problematic, but if it's helpful to ensure to our constituents that we consider this mostly a full-time job with a full-time salary, I'm interested in the conversation.
Alderman from the 16th.
I don't have anything right now, Madam Chair.
Okay.
Thanks.
Alderwoman from the 2nd is not here. Alderwoman from the 8th.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, I'm also curious. I think that in some places we are classified as part-time, but I cannot figure out where that is. And Alderman from the 1st, it was something maybe in the pay scale, maybe where that was found. It was something that I remember seeing, I think early on when I got elected, but I can't find it anywhere either in the charter or in our rules that we are part-time. And I surely am devoting more than part-time work here already. But because it's not already stated anywhere, I don't know. I'm kind of in the middle on this. I would be interested to hear what other folks have to say and what the members of the public have to say. I don't think that this, as written right now, looking at the board bill, there's no prohibition on other work. There are specifics, like, so the county I know has gone through some of this process where they have, stated that the county executive cannot hold any outside employment. That is not what this bill says. It does not require a certain number of hours. Full-time is classified differently between different organizations and different entities that employ folks. So without sort of that further definition, I'm not sure what the point is here. And so I want to hear more. I know we've gone on for a while today, but yeah, I was also looking at other positions in the charter. There's no requirement that the mayor's job is a full-time job. There's no requirement that the comptroller's job is a full-time job. It doesn't exist in the charter for other positions. And so I'm on the fence here. I would love to hear more conversation, but that's just looking at it right now. It does not look like there's any specifics to vouch for a number of hours or not hold other employment. It just states that it's a full-time. And if that is purely for classification for a salary increase, then that makes sense, but I don't think it needs to be in the charter. So that's where I'm at right now. Thank you.
Thank you. Alderman from the 24th.
Thank you, Madam President. I'm kind of torn on this one because I think even people who have the idea that they're going to be maintaining a different full-time job while doing this end up with a full-time job being an alderman and a part-time job doing something else, or whatever that may be, just because there simply aren't enough hours in the day. We would need more days in the week to be able to work the full-time job doing whatever it was before you came to City Hall, and to fulfill all the responsibilities that this job entails. it is interesting to me that the alderman from the 8th noted that it doesn't state that the mayor is a full-time position or the comptroller is a full-time position. But I also don't know any of my colleagues here that don't treat this as a full-time position. I don't have an issue with the language. Essentially, so long as there's not some sort of prohibition on any other jobs. There's plenty of people out there that work a full-time job and then do other things in the weekends or evenings to supplement their income. And even if we were to raise the income for aldermen, as we've discussed in the previous bill, there are certain places in the city where a single person would not be able to raise a family on that income. And I do want to make sure that we're not, for me, for example, I can live my life on the salary we're making. But if I don't want to raise up the ladder behind me and make it so that other people who don't have some of the fortunes that I have can't run for this job and do this job simply because they have a financial burden. And then we're going to also then say, even on your evenings and weekends and your spare time, you're forbidden from taking on any other jobs that would get you some money, whether it's bartending or mowing lawns or, anything that someone may do to supplement their income. And I believe the alderman from the 25th also brought an interesting point for various professional licenses in order to maintain those. There may be, for law, there's continuing legal education, which isn't a job, but I don't know for other professional licenses if there are work hour requirements. But that's something that I would like to hear more about, certainly, before we did anything that would bar anyone from any additional employment. But again, I think that most people are doing this full time anyway, so I don't have a huge problem with the language. I would imagine that if we were going to change it for this, we should probably also ensure that the mayor and the comptroller are full time as well. And with that, I'll yield.
Alderwoman from the 13th.
Thank you so much, Madam President. I agree with a lot of what was just said from the alderman from the 24th about being cognizant of who we prevent from participating in this sort of change if it were to happen. And I agree that I'd say most of us, even if we have some outside work of some sort, spend what would be considered a full-time number of hours on the job already. The idea that we're going to have twice as much work going into, whoever's here with 14 wards, I think I don't know that it's 100% accurate. There's only so many ward capital meetings that we'll have to be at. There's only so many committees, and I'm hopeful that the new ward reduction committee can be thoughtful about looking at what can be made easier and more concise and consolidated going forward. I'm cognizant of the fact that the last time that the salary did change for the Board of Aldermen, that there were twice as many people in the 13th ward, at least. So the number of people that we're serving now versus, when the salary changed, I know that's not necessarily what we're talking about right now, is, going to be the same. And now we have the internet, which is hugely helpful for our communications purposes. So definitely some things about the job have gotten easier, I would think, over the last 30 years. So I appreciate your time. I'm really looking forward to public comment on this. I yield back.
Thank you. Alderman from the 5th.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair / President, or vice versa. I think most of my concerns have already been raised, but in reviewing this board bill, something comes to mind that I think I'd like clarification on. Would the Alderman from the 23rd yield for a single question?
Yeah, just a single question. Well, yeah, I'll yield for a single question, but again, this we're going to bring up on Saturday
Yes.
and up against two timelines. I'm really upset that this was thrown at me in between. I canceled the meeting to fit between things. So yes, if it's a quick question, let's have it.
It is very quick. In reviewing the bill several times, I don't see what I think is a critical component here. It does not refer to paid work. In other words, I think there's a gray area for older people such as myself. I consider my work in the fabulous Fifth Ward to be full-time plus already. But for those of us who do work with community service organizations, with 501c3s that are non-paid, I don't see any clarity in that type of engagement in the bill, and I think it might be important. But with that, go ahead.
What I would say is between now and Saturday, if anyone has amendments they want to put in here, please do that. I'm open to amendments. So if you have amendments or things you want to add, certainly do that. This is a start.
Okay.
It's a, but if you do, please send amendments. Okay.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to get that point about a definition of work. Paid, unpaid, 501c3, community service. I think that needs to be clarified. And with that, I yield back.
Thank you.
Second, I don't think she's on. I did just want to clarify, based upon what the Alderwoman from the 8th said, this does not, as currently written, have a prohibition in it for other employment. It simply says that it is full-time. So I want to make sure that that is understood in how this is currently written. It is written differently than what is in place in the county because it does not have that prohibition in that language. But if there's no further discussion, we can take this back up on Saturday with the public. The last item that I want to just discuss really quickly.
So if I'm done, Madam Chair, I'm going to move on.
That is great, Alderman.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. So last, form of business, we have under committee discussions, the air filtration system. This has been discussed by this committee somewhat in the past. The long and short of it is, in order for us to get back into the chambers and get there safely so that there is some movement of air that exists within that, there are essentially two courses of action. One would be temporary filtration devices. These are portable filtration devices. Cost around $80,000 and can be transported back and forth between the chambers and between the Kennedy room in order to produce that filtration. The second course of action is upgrading to create an HVAC system within the chambers of the Board of Aldermen, and that is the cost of that is approximately $1.2 million. And so my recommendation in order to get us back into the chambers would be to go ahead and purchase the portable filtration devices that we could use both in the chambers and in the Kennedy room for the foreseeable future. And then, down the line, perhaps work on a bigger capital plan for issues with City Hall, because we know it's not just the Board of Aldermen. We know there's numerous issues and things that need to be upgraded throughout this building. And so I could see that be taken up with an overall capital plan for for City Hall, but I wanted to get feedback and approval from the committee before moving forward with those filtration devices. Is there any discussion? Alderwoman from the 6th and then Alderwoman from the 1st.
Thank you, Madam President. I wanted to say that I think it's incredibly important that we are back in person. It has been way too long for us to continue meeting. I think especially for our full Board of Aldermen meetings, it's a much different manner in which we all handle ourselves and are able to interact with one another. I don't know of any other legislative body in the entire country that is still operating everything in a Zoom meeting or remote meeting. I do like the option of having at least the opportunity for members of the public in committee hearings to be able to attend via Zoom. I'm not opposed to a hybrid method. And I think that the small sum of around $80,000 to get us where we need to be for the foreseeable future makes a whole lot of sense. And I'm in complete agreement that we should invest that money and look at the further expenditure of just bringing our system up to date in the chambers. And so please let me know how I can continue to be supportive of that. I know my constituents were all extremely grateful to see us back together, even though we were at 1520 Market this past week.
Great. Alderwoman from the 1st.
Just so we won't have to keep doing this, I'm gonna say, Madam Chair, you're the president out on the floor, but I'm gonna do Madam Chair in here. We already made that decision when Vollmer became the president. We had a meeting, and so if you look at those minutes, and the clerk should be able to tell you, we already decided to spend money. Again, I'm going to tell you, I just didn't go over that, but it's in our minutes, and it was under Vollmer that we decided. I want to say the amount that we said we were going to spend, but it should be in our minutes. And so we only had a few meetings under him.
Right. When I discussed with Clerk Kennedy, he said that this needed to be brought up to this committee, that it was discussed, but I think an ultimate decision was not made.
No, we did. He gave us an amount and we did do that. So you guys can do what you want, but we actually did decide, because he was saying we could not come back in. And at first we said some little amount like $30,000, and that was not going to be enough. And then we said, okay, we have to spend what we need to get back in here. So, and we did authorize him to go about doing that, to clean because we authorized him to clean the chambers. And we did do a bigger amount. So it should be in the minutes, okay?
Okay. Alderman from the 24th.
Thank you, Madam President. I agree with a lot of what the Alderwoman from the 6th said. I think it's long past time that we are back in person. I can't think of any other entity in general that continues to meet virtually for everything they do, particularly not anyone doing the type of work that we're doing. I think the $1.1 million would be great, but there are so many things at City Hall that need to be done, so many projects there that need to be done, that I think it may make more sense to look at that as a more holistic project for all of City Hall. But I think short term, it makes sense to spend this $80,000 on the HVAC, get us back in the chambers, and hopefully at some point the health department will give us some sort of all clear, and we won't even need to use those anymore. It's my hope, at least. So that's all I have. Thank you.
Alderman from the 16th.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The Alderman from the 24th just sort of reminded me, this is at the recommendation of the health department, correct? That these parafighters come in. I thought that was the case back under the direction the Alderwoman from the 1st was talking about, and I'm pretty sure there is a information that they were consulted. Because I don't think any of us are air purifying experts either. So if we can unearth that information and circulate it, I think that would be helpful too. I'm not opposed to a small amount of money being spent to get us in chambers. I think our constituents demand that we meet in person, quite honestly. So that's all I have.
I'm gonna go to Alderwoman from the 8th and then to Alderwoman from the 9th, just because Alderwoman from the 8th is on the committee. Alderwoman from the 8th.
Thank you. I agree. I think this is great. If there's a way that we can get this done with our standing budget, then awesome. Whatever it is to make our facilities as safe as possible for us to meet in person, I think I'm on board with. So I am curious though, like the Alderman from the first talked about, there was for sure some authorization of expenditures that happened. And so going back and getting those specific documents, maybe from previous personnel meetings, would be good. And if I do recall, I think that this money was included in budget conversations as well as this came through. So if this money is in the budget, then yes, by all means, let's go. Let's do this.
We have it in the budget for the Board of Aldermen, but BPS had not yet ordered the filtration devices. They were waiting on the Board of Aldermen to be able to do that.
Sure. Okay. So are you wanting us to go ahead and vote today just to ensure that this actually does get done? I'm happy to do that, even if it's a double authorization of the money. If we can go back and figure out if that money was authorized before, then, I don't think we should be spending twice as much money, but if we need to authorize just to make sure we're covering our bases today so they can order over the holidays, then I'm in favor of that.
Great. I see that Clerk Kennedy now has his is on video, so maybe he wants to add a little bit to the discussion, refresh all of our memories on this.
May I?
Yes, please.
Okay. Yeah, the committee, personnel committee, did discuss it in a number of other items. What they immediately voted on was up to $10,000 to get the cleaning done for the chambers and some of that equipment related to it. This amount was discussed, but a final vote was not held on this particular one. So we couldn't go forward in spending the money. The Alderwoman from the first was ready to spend whatever was necessary to get it going. And so, however, unfortunately, the committee did not put this amount or make that amount available for the staff to move forward on. It was a smaller amount, even though they talked up to about $120,000 for various items. So that's what the minutes would reflect. In the Google Drive is the actual bid and the picture of the unit, which we had before, as well as the email that we had gotten from the health department recommending that we don't use the chambers until some filtration system is gotten, or to use another location or continue by Zoom. I would just like to mention one other thing, Madam Chairman, Chairwoman, is that even though you may have an HVAC system, most of the departments in the city do not have the necessary filtration in those systems that can catch the type of particles that you have with these particular type of SARS viruses. As you know, many of those HVAC systems are very old. What the Board of Aldermen's recommendation, or what we got from the Facilities Management and Board of Public Service, was that $1.2 million was for an updated unit, because the board doesn't have any that also has these new types of filters designed to catch these type of particles.
Okay, thank you for that background information. It's appreciated. So we will go ahead and take a vote on this today. Alderwoman from the 19th.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I wanted to ask that we consider being extremely cautious. We're talking about people's health. We do know that we have some new respiratory particles that are running around. Our hospitals are full. The flu has a different trait this year. We have too many problems for a space that has not had any normal cleaning care. So that means either replace their carpet. I don't think you can clean it fully. I think it needs to be replaced. And then the system that all the Board of Clerk was talking about, and the sanitation of the area, which means the walls, windows, everything is a 24-hour system that's going to go, it's going to sit in there and clean out. You see, you got mold and everything else that's been sitting in there. And remember, we don't have the best cleaning. We clean at things. So we also need to make sure that we have enough money. And in order to be safe, I would recommend that you vote to have at least a minimum of $120,000 available, probably more like 150, so that anything we come across with Board of Public Service and or the Health Department, we can take care of it. I know everybody wants to just get in that space, but it's about health right now more than anything else. Thank you.
Thank you. Alderwoman from the 14th.
Actually, the Alderwoman from the 19th, I agree with her. That carpet in there is just, and besides that, it's a trip hazard. To me, ever since I've been in office 13 years ago, it's a trip hazard. It's filthy. It's probably loaded with every germ conceivable to man or woman. And I don't know what's under there. I don't know when it comes out, if it can just be scrubbed down and we can do bare floors. I know the acoustics might be a little weird, but we'll just have to deal with it. But I think, like she said, you need to allow as much money as we possibly can to get those chambers cleared and cleaned.
Right. Any further discussion? Alderwoman from the 8th.
Sure. So I agree that our carpets and things definitely need some updating. And we've talked previously about remediation that has happened back in the offices. I don't know, though, at the moment, we don't have an amount for that, and where we're at in the budget process. I guess I think my suggestion would be authorizing the amount of money that we have bid for these particular items first. And if we get a new bid on replacing the carpet or ripping that up or whatever that is, that next step that needs to take place, I'm happy to help fund that. I think we've underfunded the Board of Aldermen and the chambers in particular for a long time now. I'm happy to vote for that in the future. I just, without a ballpark figure or a bid specifically on that, I don't know that I'm comfortable with that today. The email from the health department does not dictate anything about the carpets. It does, continuing cleaning and things like that. I would just say work with what we know at the moment and be ready to come back and authorize some more if the clerk is able, or the clerk and the president's staff are able to figure out what that number is that we need, then happy to vote to support that.
Okay, thank you, Alderwoman. I'm happy to go and get a bid from BPS to put out a bid for replacement of the carpets. The cleaning of those carpets has already been authorized, and the expenditure of funds for all those cleaning services, but we can definitely get a bid for replacement and come back to this committee. I would like to request that, so the bid for the filtration devices is $69,000 or $60,950. My conversations with BPS is that they anticipate that the price has gone up since this was first put out. And so the request that I would like to make is to authorize up to $80,000 to be spent on this, recognizing that we hopefully will not spend up to that amount, but would like to have some flexibility if we go back to the vendor and the price has increased. Alderman from the 24th.
Thank you, Madam President. Just for the sake of expediency, could we just authorize up to $100,000, and that way we don't have to come back if it's $81,000 or something like that. You know, the hope would be that they're not going to charge us $100,000 just because we have authorized $100,000, but that way we don't have to kind of continue this song and dance.
Okay. That if the committee is comfortable with that, then I am comfortable with that, and hoping that the price is not increased quite that much since we got the bid. So, all right, if there's no further discussion, then I would like to go ahead and hold a vote on the authorization of $100,000 up to $100,000 to spend on air filtration devices for the chambers. Madam Clerk, could you?
Do you need a motion? Is that a motion? And then I'll,
I need a motion.
I move that we authorize up to and including $100,000 for air filtration as laid out in the previous bids.
second.
There's a motion by the Alderman from the 24th, seconded by the Alderman from the 25th. Madam Clerk, could you please call the roll?
Alderman Cone,
Aye.
Alderwoman Tyus, Alderwoman Ingracia,
Aye.
Alderman Oldenburg, Alderwoman Middlebrook, Alderman Narayan,
Aye.
Alderwoman Rice,
Aye.
Alderwoman Schweitzer,
Aye.
Alderman Page,
Aye.
Alderwoman Walker, President Green,
Aye.
Alderwoman Tyus, Alderwoman Middlebrook, Alderwoman Walker. We have 8 aye votes.
Thank you. By your vote, you sustain the motion to authorize up to $100,000 to be used on air filtration devices. Are there any further announcements?
I have a
Right.
question.
Sure. Alderwoman from the 13th.
Is Alderwoman Walker on this committee? I didn't see her on the list that we all got, but I've heard her name announced a few times.
So she had asked to drop off of this committee.
Okay.
So I think that the sheets just didn't get updated.
Okay, I'd just like to note that for going forward.
Excused alder people. The alderwoman from the 2nd is excused for necessary absence. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
It's moved by the alderman from the 24th, seconded by the alderman from the 5th, that we adjourn for today. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries.